welcome back to the channel. I was going to do a short video today on some of your tire options for this kind of build, super singles or some of the more narrow ones that you can use for a dually setup. Rolled a few of the options out of the shop here, got a little collection going on. First of all, I would say if you want to be more reasonable, definitely stick with a regular civilian light truck setup. Much easier, lighter, cheaper, usually lasts longer, much quieter, much easier to find. I had a 4500, also 2021 Ram, that I did just an 1.5 inch level up front, as well as the core 4x4 adjustable control arms that let you push the axle forward about 1 inch or 1.5 inches. That gives you more room. You got to have an aftermarket front bumper if you're going to go that route. Give yourself more room up front to do that. But anyway, I had got some Stazworks wheels and did a super single conversion on that, just with civilian 37 12.5 tires. They were Nitto Ridge Grapplers. Then I got a heavier camper. It wasn't the ambulance, but it was a heavy camper that would exceed the weight rating on the rear. Most light truck tires you're going to find are around 4,000 pound capacity each. Frequently you'll see a 3970 pound is really common. There's a 3750. Just a couple that are just a bit over 4,000, like 4,050 pounds, something like that. So back to Stazworks, got their dually set up for the rear, which is fantastic. Definitely recommend that. So you can run your super single wheel basically just up front, run a 37 12.5 or 13.5, and then a 37 by 11.5 in the back. That's really, I think, the best setup. I'd have to measure again, but probably had 2.5 inches of room between the duals. So, you know, you definitely can't go wider than an 11.5. That puts you right about where you want to be for dual spacing and keeps you less than 102 wide. There may be an exception out there, but nothing that I found. You're limited to a 37 because anything taller than that you can only find in a 13.5 wide. I couldn't even find a 12.5, and even 12.5 would be too much. You wouldn't have your dually spacing. So there's a few 37 11.5s out there. Nitto Ridge Grappler, I think they're Trail Grappler, and then Falcon Wild Peak RTs. You can get a 37 11.5 in all three of those. And like I said, that's a pretty nice setup. That truck had 430 gears. I felt like that was kind of the right setup. Gives you, you know, plenty of weight capacity, and was really nice, a really nice driver. But obviously if you want to go bigger, you're going to be kind of looking at this. And I hadn't realized it at the time, but there are some tall military / commercial tires that let you get in the, you know, 44 inch range and still skinny out back with those, with a couple different ways to do it. When I bought this 5500, it had the Hutchinson wheels on it and the Continental MPT 81s. So I'll talk a little bit about those kind of initially. But first, quick mention, there's roughly 5 or so tire options you have. I'm sure there's some more that are tougher to find. You know, the Michelins I'm going to talk about are the XZL, but there's like a X-Force ZL, which is a bit updated version. There's an XL, there's a couple others. So I think those are just a little more rare and hard to find. But a couple that are common that I have not had any experience with is the Pirelli P22. I see those military surplus sites, eBay, stuff like that. They seem to be fairly accessible. They look like they're a skinnier 335, kind of like the Continental, but I don't have the measurements on those. And then there's a petless RM190. Heard good things about it. Don't really know for sure kind of how they ride, how quiet they are, how long lasting, but they are available in both a 68 and an 81 mile an hour speed rating, which is the 81 is a little bit harder to find. So that be really curious if anyone has run that petless, how they like it. But so anyway, back to the Continental MPT 81. Pretty well known that it's a very short-lived tire. Most people say 20,000 miles on them, sometimes even less. Like I said, that's what it had. It rode pretty nice initially. Was, not quiet, but perfectly reasonable for a mud tire. Rode really smooth. It was they were balanced just with the Centromatic wheel balancers. Rode pretty nice initially. So I drove that super single for a while, and then just stumbled on the DBL Design dually setup on Marketplace. Wasn't really looking for it, but stumbled on it. It was a good deal, so thought, what the heck, I might as well have both options available. So, and found after taking some measurements that the MPT 81 was narrow enough to fit on those dual setup. I had 2.75 inches of space between them. Sat right at 102 inches wide. So threw on some, new Continentals for a dual option. It was really nice, very stable, on the freeway heading out west and stuff like that. But at about 10,000, 11,000 miles total. So my truck was pretty much new when I picked it up, 190 miles on it. So all the components were new. In retrospect, my caster, I think, was a bit off. I don't know how caster would really impact a wear pattern, but, everything else that would cause, a funny wear pattern, bad shocks, worn components, that shouldn't have been the case. The other thing I thought about was I wonder if the Centromatics just didn't have quite enough weight in them and they were off balance a bit. I don't know, but again, it drove great. No wiggle to the steering wheel, really smooth. After about 10, 11,000 miles, those front tires got so loud that it was undrivable. And I can kind of show you the wear pattern up front. So, these are the ones that were on the rear. These only have about 3,000 miles on them, so still look pretty new. Again, these weren't on the front. It was the front that really got goofy. So you can see, every other line of tread block is about a quarter inch lower than the other. And so this is the other front one, and it's not even in a pattern. Just certain tread blocks are way higher than others. Again, this is a total of, at this point, probably 13,000 miles on them that they did this. So could be user error, something I had wrong with my setup, but I've heard, in addition to these things just wearing out extremely fast, pretty poor wear patterns. So the back end, not too bad, but even the back, so there's just variation in wear across these tread blocks. So anyway, became undrivable because of noise. Even if you don't run into this wear pattern issue, just the fact that they're only going to last you about 20,000 miles at best is enough for me to say steer clear of these. I would definitely not recommend. They're cheaper than most. They're more available, but not worth it in my opinion. Just a couple more kind of quick facts, I guess, about the Continental. So these are rated at 6780 at 90 psi. We've got a K speed rating, which is 68 miles an hour. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to do a tire temperature test. So that's how much they're rated for weight-wise and speed-wise. From what I've read, and DBL Design very explicitly says this on their website, that is meant to be a speed rating at max load. And they say, you know, all the trucks they build, which, you know, usually weigh much less than the you know, combined rating of all these tires, that freeway speeds have been completely acceptable. I don't know enough to confirm or deny that, but it makes sense to me that, you know, your weight rating and your speed rating are going to be closely linked. So if you're at much less weight than your total capacity, that you might be able to go faster, but again, I don't know that myself. Thanks for tuning in.